Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Well, today we don't really have a card, it's some tags. I decided to start on my Christmas tags and I'm making some shakers. So anyway, it was kind of a fun project and I'm using the large tags which just came out by Simon Says Stamp, and believe it or not, this is a Valentine's Day set and it's got some matching dies. It's called Filled with Love and I have used it on so many different occasions, not just Valentine's Day. So anyway, it all just depends on what colors you use. So here I'm using Real Red by Stampin' Up! And I'm stamping the candy in that set. I actually went back because the Stampin' Up! Real Red actually ran. The ink ran when I put some stickles on it, and so I redid it in Memento Love Letter. Anyway, I've got some green leaf and some green hills hero art. So I've got two different kinds of green just to give a little bit of variation. This is the Stampin' Up! Punch from the Biddy Punch Pack. I don't think they sell it anymore, but it's about 3/8 of an inch wide. You could use a 1/2 inch punch. I think that would work too. There was some excess around the edges. So anyway, so here's some stickles, and I'm using my pick-me-up stick to kind of hold down the candy while I put it on, and it's actually easier to do the stickles before you punch, and that's what I did the next time I made the shaker. Anyway, so I'm going to set that off to the side to dry, and I'm going to cut my tag out of some Crumb Cake cardstock and also some Neenah Solar White. This is a polka dot stamp by Hero Arts. I've had it for a long time. I'm going to ink it up with some Versamark ink because I want it to be a subtle background. So I'm just going to do a quick tone on tone. I love how Versamark looks on the Crumb Cake or the craft cardstock. Here's the scratch sheet that you've seen me use probably 100 times in the last few months, and see how pretty that looks. So I'm going to take the jar die now and I'm going to place it kind of in the center of the bottom portion of the tag, and I'll run it through the Sizzix. Now I also decided, rather than to stamp the bottom of the tag, I'm going to go ahead and stamp this on a separate piece of paper so it'll be easier to center. So I'm going to stamp that on some Neenah, and then I'm going to just cut it. I'm just going to trim it because I don't really need to use the die. Now I have this set by Lawn Fawn. It's just it's a tag set, and I'm just using the 2 stamp. So I'm going to stamp that in the upper left hand corner, and then I'm going to write the person's name. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, because the person who gets this is going to wonder how in the world you got their name on the inside of the shaker. So on the first one I created, I didn't put the name on the inside, but then once I figured that out, I thought it'd be pretty cool. This is some acetate. It's called Window Sheets by Stampin' Up. They sell, a lot of different people sell it. The one by Stampin' Up is a really thick piece, so I like them a lot. I just put some Tombow Mono Multi Glue on the back, and I'm going to place it right there and just squeeze it lightly, and then I'll just let it dry like that. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is center the jar in the back. So how I figured I was going to do this is I centered the jar behind the crumb cake, and then I put the glue on, and I'm using glue so that I can, move it around just a little bit if I need to, because it'll shift a little with the glue, but with the tape runner it's pretty permanent. So then I just laid it flat down. That way I knew that when I put that crumb cake piece on top, it was going to be centered on top of the jar. Next I'm going to take some twine. This is a Christmas assortment by Doodlebug. And I'm just going to use some Tombow Mono Multi Glue. And I glued it on there, and then I just snipped the edges. You could have done it beforehand, but I wanted to make sure that it was going to be long enough. And you really won't see the edges, so it's really not a big deal if it's not perfect. And then I just tied a bow. I'm going to save that for later. Now, if you use Stampin' Up! Dimensionals, the edge, I always kind of waste the edge, or I cut them apart and try to use the pieces, but this is the perfect size. So all I did was take my scissor and I just cut it straight up the edge on these little pieces that aren't whole dimensional stickers, and I use this to put the shaker front on. So I'm just going to measure them out. I'll take the backing off, and it's just the perfect size for this, and that way that doesn't go to waste. And it doesn't have to be perfect here, because what I'm putting inside is kind of large. Those candies are kind of big. They're really not going to fall out. And I did put some sequins, but I didn't use ones that were going to go through those holes. Anyway, so here are the sequins. This is just a multi-pack by Simon Says Stamp. And here you can see my Stampin' Up! Ones, the ink ran, and they kind of turned a little bit orangey. And the ones on the bottom you can see are the Memento Love Letter. And even though I like the Real Red by Stampin' Up!, I don't know, I just didn't like it once I put the stickles on it. So I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to use the love letter ones. So I'm arranging them all in the middle there. I'm going to pick up my sequins and throw a few in there also. And I found that the small ones were a little bit too tall, and I ended up not using those on the next couple of shakers. The medium ones were perfect, and I added a couple of big ones in my next one too. So I'm just going to remove the backing, and I'm going to just put it right on top there. And there you have it. That's basically the shaker. And all I have to do is add, I'm going to add some candies at the top. So I want to punch a hole, so I adhered it to a scratch sheet so I can easily punch that hole because it's just so small. And then I put some two-way glue pen around it and put it right there over the hole. So it kind of looks like some candies are randomly popping out of the jar. And then I applied the rest of them. And on this one I used some Tombow because it was going to be overhanging the window sheet, and I just wanted to make sure it stuck really well. Now I'll take my glue dot and I'll put it right on top of the twine that's underneath my window sheet, and I'll put the bow on top there. And then finally I've got a piece of twine, the same one, and I folded it twice. So now I've got kind of 4 pieces hanging off here. I had to do it in 2 parts. So you see the loop that went through, and then I'm putting the 2 ends that are going through. And I'll catch it before it all goes through, even it out. And then I'll take the back 2 and I'll put it inside the loop and pull it. And that's pretty much it. It was a pretty simple shaker card. I made 3 different versions of this. One was actually black and gold. So if you'd like to go to my blog, I've got some photos of the other ones. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.